With the Auto Obsessive Garage. Let's tear into this Escort GT a little more, shall we? We need to really get this fuel leak taken care of, install that sending unit with fuel pump. Also gonna go ahead and change out the fuel filter at the same time. That'll put us in a good place with all the fuel components. We're also gonna go ahead and repair all the rodent damage. So going through the car, notice there was a mouse or possibly a rat at one point that got a little hungry in there and chewed up some pretty important looking wires. So we're gonna go through there. I've already spotted a few wires. We're gonna do the right thing, clean them up the right way, solder them, make sure the connections are good, and put that all back together. Once we get through that, I think we're gonna end this session with redoing the valve cover. So pulling that off, replacing the gasket. We'll do the cam angle sensor O-ring at the same time since we're right there, and I'll take care of those oil leaks. I'll also put a fresh coat of paint on that valve cover and clean it up a little bit. That sounds like a fun couple days of work at least. So let's go ahead and get on that and get this Escort GT one step closer to being done. Let's go, guys. Alright guys, let's bust open the new fuel pump that showed up. See what we have in the packaging here. I went with the Delphi unit, had really good reviews. So hopefully it'll take care of our problems. Okay, fully assembled, which is always nice. It's really good. This was our, I think it was cracked right down here where it connects on the original unit. So this will take care of that problem for sure. Well, we're hoping. Hopefully it's not something with the connector. Might need to play with that too in the car, but everything's here. You got your floater, you got your filter bag, and the fuel pump itself. So should be just a plug and play replacement. Looks great. All right, let's put it in the car. Also, this new fuel pump sending unit assembly came with a locking ring and rubber gasket replacement. Not all the kits came with this, so I made sure to purchase one that does have it. I just don't trust a 20-something-year-old rubber ring. If I'm gonna put all new components in, I might as well replace everything. So electrical connectors right here need to go through this hole here on the access cap. So you wanna run that through before you dip the fuel pump in there. So just pull the cap off, push those wires through, and then start to drop the assembly back in. Once you get that rubber grommet on the electrical connector to fit, you are ready to drop your pump in. Look at that, nice and tight, seals perfectly, as expected with a quality aftermarket part. More reasons not to cheap out. So let's go ahead and drop this pump in, connect all the fuel lines, and we'll be one step closer to completion. All right, we've got the new sending unit and fuel pump in place. Took a little bit of work to kind of angle it in. It was a tight fit to get that O-ring to seal perfectly. Had to angle it and push it down pretty hard. Got the locking ring in place. Make sure you put the rubber O-ring underneath everything because it's what actually sealing the tank. And then hammer. I like to use this rubber mallet. Works really good. And grab a big flathead screwdriver, just like this guy. And go ahead and just kind of hammer it around, obviously clockwise to tighten it, and that locking ring will tighten that fuel sending unit down on the rubber gasket and create an airtight seal, or more importantly, fuel tight seal. Once that's all in place, you clip up these two lines. I'm not a fan of these plastic clips. I've never actually, I don't think they use that on many other cars. I think that's kind of a Ford thing. I could be wrong, but let's see. Hopefully this isn't the issue. I hope this connection isn't the issue. Now when we power this pump on, and start the car, if we have fuel squirting out here, we know this is the culprit now. That being said, the other one did have a hairline crack, and inspecting the unit right here, and that's pretty standard. Sometimes these things rust completely, but like I said, rust isn't an issue on the car. So we'll start the car up, we'll get the rest of this buttoned up and put it back the way it should be, and hopefully when we start the car, we don't have fuel coming out. All right, the Escort GT is running, and look at that. Fuel sending unit is dry. No leaks under the car, no leaks at the fuel filter either. I call that a success. Even giving it some gas a little bit. Of course, I'll keep an eye on it when I fill it up again, just because that was the instance that caused it to leak. But I mean, the tank's pretty topped off and I'm giving it lots of gas. So I think that's it, guys. I think we fixed our fuel leak. Now on to our other maintenance items. Alright, next up on our maintenance list is doing this fuel filter. A good time to do it is especially when you're swapping out the fuel sending unit and fuel pump. You might as well have all your fuel components being used. So you can see back in there, that might be the OEM factory fuel filter. So I ordered another Motorcraft one. We're going to go ahead and install that and we'll be good to go in the fuel department. here we go. We've got our Ford Motorcraft OEM replacement fuel filter for the Escort GT. So we're gonna go ahead and put that in. Like I said, it's a good time to do this when you're replacing your fuel sending unit and fuel pump. Might as well have everything be nice and new. So let's go ahead and install this. All right, just took the old fuel filter out. A little advice, go ahead and loosen that screw-on clamp as much as you can to give you more wiggle room. It has the same plastic clips as the fuel lines that go into the fuel sending unit. These little white guys here, so go ahead and use a screwdriver, carefully pry underneath and they should come up. You never want to force anything, especially like a plastic connector like that. Time to drop in that new fuel filter and connect the lines. And here we have our freshly installed Motorcraft fuel filter. It looks great, cleaned up the area really nice. No leaks, that's a good sign. The more I dig under the hood, the more rodent damage I find. It looks like something got in here and chewed these wires up, as you can see. So, God, it looks pretty mangled. And it looks like, so yeah, we've got, there looks like a blue-green combination, then a blue, and here's the blue, and I think the blue-green is also wrapped up in this harness right here. See that wire? You can definitely tell something chewed on that. So I need to cut back on that wiring harness maybe a little bit, pull the electrical tape off, sort the wires, create some good ends, fire up the soldering iron again, and solder these connections. This is where it all goes in. You can see the 3 connectors there just chewed, and then this thing's mangled. I might just run new wire for these 3 connectors, connect it really well with solder, and then heat wrap everything with insulation. It's a shame. When cars sit though, I'm telling you, if you park your car in some grass, this is gonna happen. You're gonna get rodents up here and they love the tasty insulation on these wires. So let's do this. The other connectors we've done so far are good. Just more projects on top of the project. So something that's kind of setting me back a little bit is all this rodent damage, all the wiring that's been chewed up. Just going through, making sure everything down in here has been repaired. It's hard to see at first, but when you start digging around, you really start noticing these things. I'm also not a wire twister, electrical tape kind of guy, so I'm gonna go in there, I'm gonna cut everything back with a razor blade. I like to use a little razor blade for more control. Sure, wire strippers save a lot of time, but with these old wires, I find that the insulation and the copper itself will oftentimes break if you pull too hard. So I don't want to push it like that. So I'll just hand cut the sheath backs to expose the copper, and then I'll go ahead solder the connections to make sure we have a good connection, and then ultimately I'll put some heat shrink wrap insulation around it, heat that up and make sure everything's going to be nice and sealed and connection will be good and won't have to worry about shorts or grounding issues or anything like that. So let's get to work. There's a few wires down here we're going to work on right now. It's going to be fun. This stuff takes a lot of time. Alright guys, here's a better view of what I'm seeing. As you can see, very limited space, very limited wiring. I haven't cut it back yet, but I've gone in and actually separated all these wires. So you can see there's a green, blue, and another blue that's separate. The green and blue are kind of close together. We just need to make sure that, you know, we're definitely getting in there. We're gonna go ahead and peel those back, reveal the copper, and actually connect all of those with some solder, shrink wrap them. And just for perspective, these are not, I mean, these little ones coming off the main harness here, I mean, that's my finger. I mean, these are very small little sections, so I gotta cut it very carefully and definitely be very careful with my soldering and make sure it's nice and clean, make sure the solder's nice and even, and then definitely heat wrap it. So time to start peeling it back, which is a tricky part, and then get the soldering gun out. Well, that took a little longer than I intended. I like to do a really clean job with these, so time is not an issue. Do it right the first time, and I don't have to dig in here again. As you can see all the coppers exposed on those 3 that were tight together. These were quite a bit easier. These guys right here, you can see some nice wiring showing there. That'll be good. So I gotta connect these to these little nubbies here. We'll use a little solder. It's gonna be a little tricky. Hold them in place and solder at the same time. It's a weird angle with the car being jacked up so far in the air, but we'll get it together. Connecting these guys to these guys, then we'll heat wrap them. You always prep the heat wrap first. Go ahead and slide your heat wrap sheath over the wire that you're gonna insulate. That's a good little top tip there before you solder it, because you can't get it on once you connect the wires. So we're gonna cut those to size, slide them on, solder the wires, and then move the heat wrap over the actual connection, heat that up, and hopefully we can seal all this up and we'll have good connections again. There we have it. Our 3 loose wires are reconnected to their appropriate wires again. Repairing this rat damage is sinking a lot of time that I didn't think I was going to put in. To be honest, I didn't notice that much rat damage when I bought the car. Then as a final little finishing touch,
On this project, I go ahead and put some convoluted wiring loom. That plastic stuff you see kind of matches the OEM style. So now you can not see those 3 individual wires any longer. Can't see the connectors, can't see the heat wrap. So it makes it look really clean. And if you just step back and look in through the engine, you are not gonna notice the work I just did. And that's what I like to do. I like to keep it looking clean, especially with builds like this, and definitely keep it looking factory fresh. And here's some additional rodent damage before and after photos. All right, time to take this valve cover off. When replacing the cam angle sensor O-ring, you want to have a line drawn. You can grab a Sharpie and make this line to make sure you install the cam angle sensor in the same location. I just can't replace a valve cover gasket without going in there and painting the valve cover. I'm really happy how it turned out.